that lets you save. Look here.
True Form Live.
It's really cool and it's unique and it's different and interesting, but I think that all they need is bodies and people to stand around, to be 100% honest with you. That's just my perspective. I could be wrong. I don't want to downplay it. It was definitely a cool experience.
Welcome to Exploring Mind and Body with Drew Tadia. Drew is an expert in nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. And he wants to help you live a healthier, longer, and more active life. Now here's your host, Drew Tadia.
Welcome to another edition of nationally syndicated Exploring Mind and Body. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. We're coming at you with a brand new show. We appreciate whether you're listening on terrestrial radio across the country or as a podcast around the world. We certainly wouldn't be here without you. So stick around. We got all that coming up.
This is Exploring Mind and Body. Naturally improve your lifestyle one show at a time with your host, Drew Tadia.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about being on a movie set, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. We're going to talk about that. So what happened was they tell you at the very last minute, and I don't know if that's because they're so busy or because of privacy reasons, or I'm not exactly sure why, like why everything's last minute. And we actually applied to go to the one, and they're doing filming in Didsbury. So we're like, it's right over there. It's a no-brainer. They actually they said, what did they do? The first message was, hey, all they said was they're looking for extras, send in pictures. So you send in pictures, which is a bit odd because I feel like they're just looking for bodies. Like, I don't think it matters what you look like, although it would be flattering to believe or think that you got on because you're good looking. But I think that's a stretch. I think they're just looking for bodies. So it would take someone in like a unique, and they need a ton of people, but it would take a unique individual that could do that. So you need someone that has a flexible job or doesn't have a job. Someone that doesn't have kids or can bring their kids with them. And you need someone close enough. And then you need someone that can sit there all day and do nothing. So it almost sounds prestigious, but it's not. And I'm only saying that because, and I don't mean like it's really cool and it's unique and it's different and interesting, but I think that all they need is bodies and people to stand around, to be 100% honest with you. That's just my perspective. I could be wrong. I don't want to downplay it. It was definitely a cool experience, but they did ask me, they said, will you shave your mohawk? And I was like, do I have to? And then they said yes. It was filmed in the 80s, like 80s theme, so it wasn't too many people with mohawks. They don't let you wear any jewelry, so no jewelry of any kind for obvious reasons. And then glasses, like people had to take their glasses off. It was really cool. Like, I'm a detail person. Like, every single detail matters to me. Like, I don't just say this to say it. I honestly feel that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when someone like shakes their hand, and I know it's kind of crazy now, but even if they don't shake your hand, like if I go and shake someone's hand and they don't want to, you can tell a lot about that from an individual. If someone has a firm grip, you can, like, I pay attention to every single detail, what people are looking at. So that's what was most interesting to me, is being on set, and I'm watching the actors, I'm watching the extras, I'm watching the film crew. Like, it was really cool for me to see the behind the scenes and paying attention to every single detail, and that's what they do, which was really cool for me. And it sounds funny because earlier, like, I played professional sports, and everyone wants to be in the limelight. Everyone wants to be the one, right? They want to be the star. But for me, like, the behind the scenes was way more interesting. So let me tell you the process first before I get into the actual day. So the driving was the biggest obstacle for us because we were hoping to go to Didsbury. They did filming throughout the week there, and this was for Calgary, so you had to go in and they have all their extra protocols, which is quite ridiculous if you ask me. And I think if you ask anyone, even the people that were there, but you had to go and every time you go on set, you had to be tested. And then we had to go in a different day, so that was twice. And then we had to go on a different day to get costume fitting. And then the filming was actually yesterday, which is Thursday. And then they don't give you the details till the night before. And like I said, I don't know if that's for privacy purposes or what was going on there, but they didn't tell us. So they sent out a bunch of emails, always last minute. And then we go to sleep early. Like, we go to sleep early, we wake up early. So we were asleep, and then we wake, and they hadn't messaged us, and we wake up at 4 a.m. and they're like, you have to be there at 6. Like, I don't know what they call it. They have all these fancy words that I just want to share it with you because from the outside it looks really cool, and it was a really nice experience. I keep thinking, like, is that something that I would do again? And let me get into that. that. But so what I said is it's 4 a.m. and they're like, hey, you guys got to come. You got to come in. You got to be there at 6. And we're like, 6, because it's an hour drive and it's 4 o'clock, and then you have less than an hour to get ready, and you jump in the car and go. And then of course we had our fit fam. And that was a Thursday. That's why I talk about we have our supportive people and our fit fam. Like these are our customers. They're our people. And if you have a handful of people that aren't understanding and aren't grateful for all the work that you do, and then they don't like understand that things come up in life, then you have conflict. Like I felt bad for sure, but I also felt confident that our people could handle a workout on their own. Then we show up. So we told our fit fam, hey guys, you gotta do your own workout this morning. Thank you for your understanding. Jump in the car, show up to, there was a zoo parking lot in Calgary, and it was all dark. And they had all these trailers everywhere, and there wasn't a whole lot of signage, which was a bit disappointing. So we didn't really know where to go. And then from there, there wasn't like clear. It wasn't like clear where to go or what to do. So there's a guy standing by a tent, and he says, hey, go put your clothes in there. No one said anything about signing in. Go put your clothes over there, and then come into the tent. And we already had our costumes. We already tried them on before, so they're sitting there waiting. That was a smooth process. So you go into another tent, and it was a bit cold. It was 6 a.m. and it was cool. It was very cool. Like not cool like sunglasses. Cool. It was freezing out. So you go into a lineup, and then you gotta wait to get into your costume. And then they had all the like tent big, like those easy takedown tents, like the white tents, kind of look like circus tents. And they had tables and people sitting there. So you go get your clothes. You go into one of this like just a makeshift black curtain area. There's a bunch of them. So you go in there and you change, and then you got to put all your clothes in your bag, and then you go out. And then from there, I went and put my clothes back in the room. There's tables and rooms. You're sitting there. And then you have to go to makeup, which is hair and makeup is what they called it. And there was nothing for me to do. Obviously, they asked me to shave my head. I did. And then they filled in my earring. It's still in there. They put silicone in there, I guess, and then they put powder, and they powdered my forehead. And that forehead, they were like, I was done inside of 5 minutes. And there's some people sitting there for 20 minutes. I'd imagine they were trying to get them in and out as quick as possible. But there was a lot of people. My gosh, there was these were extras. We were extras. There was hundreds. There had to be. It was crazy how big the production is. So you go and you get your costume fitted, and then I don't know how to tie a tie. So she comes and ties my ties, and she put my cuff links in, and they're fixing you up. It's really interesting. I don't know how they get I don't want to put anyone down, but people in the act, I don't know if it's the acting scene. I don't know if it was, this is my first experience. You have to do things a few times before you can feel the energy and the people. But the extras were weird. Like they almost seemed like introverts that wanted to be in the limelight. It was very odd dynamic. But anyways, there's this one guy there, and I seen him throughout the day because he was so weird. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. But he was like he walked like a robot. He's very awkward, and he just stand and stare. And then like, oh my God, he was just very odd individual. And then of course they're busy and rushing around, and then they take a picture of everyone, and that picture goes to someone else that approves it for you to be in the set. And it's all happening so quick, and everyone's being rushed and moved out. And then he's like, "Can you email me a picture?" And the lady's like, "No." And then he doesn't say anything. He just turns around and walks away. And then they still need to take a picture of him. They weren't done with his costume. So I don't know if he was upset. He had no emotion. It was very odd. It was very odd. But anyways, so they're rushing you out, but they rush you through different like step by step. But then you're sitting there waiting. So they're rushing you through makeup and costume, and then you go back in your tent and you sit there, and that's when you wait. So we had to wait an extra hour. So after you get all your makeup and hair done, you're sitting there and then they're like calling my name. They're like, Drew. There's like, Tadia, where's Tadia? And I'm like, I'm over here. They're like, well, you didn't sign in. And if you don't sign in, then they got to tell someone else, hey, this extra didn't show up. Maybe you need another extra. But when we got there, we were one of the first people there. So no one said anything about signing in. They just sent us straight to costume after we put our stuff down. And so they're like, well, you didn't sign in. And I was like, well, no one told me to sign. So at any rate, you have to sign in, and you're supposed. Then they told us you have to sign out. The first thing you do is you sign in, then you sign out. So at the end of the day, we go to sign out, and they're like, oh, you don't have to sign out. We already got you signed out. See you later. So that was funny. But anyway, so we're sitting there, and they served us breakfast, which was nice. And what was really nice is they had a vegan option, but it had eggs in it. But it was okay. Like there's eggs and potatoes and carrots, and it was fine. Like it tasted fine. It wasn't like cafeteria prison food. It was actually pretty good. But I thought it was nice that they had an option that didn't have bacon or sausage, because we wouldn't have ate it the whole meal, or we wouldn't have ate the sausage, and then that'd just be wasted. So it was nice they had an option that had some vegetables in it. So we sitting there for an hour in the tent, and it's freezing out, and our heater stops working in the tent, and it's cold. Like it's cold, I'm telling you. I think it might have been colder in the tent than outside the tent. People are sitting there freezing. But then you have the regulars who knew what was going on, so they got blankets on their legs and around. And we're sitting there like, man, why didn't someone tell us to bring some blankets? So we're freezing. And then I walked into another tent and it's all toasty in there. I was like, oh, man, why couldn't we get a nice... So it would have been a much better experience if we had some heat flowing through there. But these things happen. I'm not saying like, I'm not complaining or saying like it was there. It was like a big problem. It was fine. It was uncomfortable, of course. But like my mindset was like, I'm in here all day. People are going to be telling me what to do, which I don't like very often. Obviously, as a business owner, in most cases, you can't handle being an employee. So I knew it was going to be an uncomfortable situation. So I said to myself, I'm going to do this one time. I'll see how it goes. And I was prepared. I suppose what I was saying is that I was prepared to be uncomfortable. Anyways, we were sitting there for another hour. They shuffle us onto a bus, big old cheese wagon. That's what we used to call them in school. Pulls up and they pile us on. There was heat on that bus, which was fantastic. And then they take you to. Then they pull. This is those of you that in the Calgary area or in the Olds area, wherever. This was in Inglewood, so we're in the close to downtown. So it was very close. They bust us from the zoo to the Inglewood area, which is very close. And then we pile off, and there's more tents. So we got to go. We got to go sit in these tents. It's actually a really nice park. They put up all these tents in a nice park. You sit there, and then and you know some of the things I know like the whole politics things is difficult for a lot of people. And everyone has different opinions, but so many things. I'm not going to dwell on it, but so many things that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like they like cram you on these buses, right? And you're this far from someone back of someone's head, and then you're squished over here, and the next person over there, and then they get you into these tents, and they put these dividers up. They put these like big like one table, and they put dividers up so you can't see the person across from you. You can't see the person next to you, and it just seems so ridiculous. Like it was extra cost. It was extra, and then you don't get a chance to talk with your neighbor, or it was a bit ridiculous. Like you're crammed in there, and then they go and they have to do this protocol that is ridiculous. But it's less personal. You have less conversations. It makes it less enjoyable, I suppose what I'm saying. And there was a lot of that throughout the day, which I won't get into, but it seemed like wasted time, wasted emotion, wasted resources. So we're basically sitting there, like you're sitting there in the tents and you're waiting to be called. That's it. So it's a lot of people had books, not a lot of people, a few people had books, most people on their phone. You're sitting there all day. And we were fortunate. So they called us out there. Maybe it was an hour. Maybe we sat there for another hour. They must have had a dozen people walking around doing makeup and hair. And so they had these people that had like huge pouches. Think of like a little fanny pack. They were huge, and they had like tweezers and scissors and makeup and sponges and colors. And there was all like the staff. My gosh, I can't even begin to fathom how much that production would cost. And you know, the thing is, most people don't even know the name of it. I guess, well, it's not even released yet. And I don't like, they had to rent out this big church. Of course, they must have rented it. They had to close off streets. You know, it was cool. I thought I like the back end, like I was saying. They have these huge lights, like big giant lights pointing into the windows. I thought that was really cool because obviously they need to alter the shadows and the lighting. But I thought it was really cool that you don't see that kind of stuff. You can look at some companies that are really aggressive, and Disney's one of them. You know what I heard is like those companies of Monopoly. Like Monopoly is really aggressive. I heard they have some really strong lawyers that if you produce anything Monopoly and try to resell it, they will tell you, hey. And then I don't know if there's a rumor going around, but someone said that last week or whatever, someone took a picture and they posted it, and they said they contacted that person, said, hey, take it down or we'll take legal action. But they didn't even make us sign any forms that says we won't be taking any pictures. I think for the most part they're worried about a phone going off, which would be very frustrating in the middle of a set. You have hundreds of people standing around. But you know what the thing is that I thought that, here's from a marketing standpoint, I would think that, just think about how much, if you have hundreds, there was at least hundreds, maybe over that, maybe a couple thousand, maybe it could be a stretch, at least hundreds of people standing around. And if those hundreds of people took little clips, or of course they didn't have to be video, but like whatever, selfies and pictures, you have hundreds of people marketing for your movie. Like, to me, it makes so much more sense to be like, hey, everyone snap a picture today. Like, that's like the amount, like, in the excitement and the exposure. And I don't know, obviously they have reasons and purposes. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. But in my opinion, if you have, like, for us, we have to like offer incentives and prizes, like, hey, well, you guys post. But if we had all of our audience posted a picture of our products on a regular basis, or even once in a while, we wouldn't have to market. But so think about these companies, and they're paying. It was paid, I should mention. They paid us. I didn't think they paid us at all. I don't even know, like, minimum wage, I'm sure. But if you had all those people that were posting on social media, even if it was like a clip or an actor, or even if it was a video clip, I don't think, they're like, oh, it has to be private. They don't want anything leaked. But if you're leaking like little snippets or pictures throughout the production, I think that would be great marketing, in my opinion. Okay, so they called us into the church, and they file you in there. And while you're walking, it was only a block away, less than a block. So you're walking walking towards the church. We were a church scene. It was a Mormon church. It was a church scene. So we were walking up there, and as we're walking there, they have this lineup of people, of all these people like fixing your hair and like putting extra makeup on, and like it was like something from a movie, like something that you'd see, like, oh, we got to move this little piece of hair over here, and then they like spray it to like stick it to their head. They had accessories, like no one could wear like their own glasses. You had, like, while the scene was filming, they had to take them off, or they had different watches, they had different earrings. It was pretty cool. I liked that part. I really liked that every single part of that detail mattered. And because I mean, it makes sense. If you're sitting there watching a show, you want to be in that. You want to be in the 80s in a Mormon church. You want everything to represent that. And I only mentioned Mormon because like that's a very specific religion. The guy who said a few lines was talking about like how they named the children. And I don't know anything about that religion. All I'm saying is that it's very different than saying going to like a Buddhist monastery, you know, like, or if someone was dressed differently or was out of, like, everything has to be perfect, especially if you're going to put this much time and effort into a production. So then they walk us into the church and they give us like pamphlets, you know, those little pamphlets you get at church or used to get. And then you walk up the stairs and then they tell you where to sit. And then they sit everyone in the church, and then they're moving people. Like, you go sit over there, you sit over there. And they put like, oh, it makes sense to put families together. It makes sense to put couples together. So then they're sitting there moving everyone. And you get into the church, and the whole front, I think that we called it the altar growing up as a Catholic. The whole front church of the altar was production. Like all it was like production staff. So they had one main director, but they had directors, and they had cameras, and they had lighting, and they had support staff, and they had like special effects staff, and then they had the extra. Of course, the extras would fill up. So for me to look around, and like as a business owner, like we know the costs of having a couple employees. We know the costs of, like, I got these 2 lights up here. I know how much those got. Of course, they probably rented that stuff, but I'm just sitting there looking around, and I'm like, my gosh, the amount. But could you imagine? Like, for me, I was trying to picture like a Hollywood movie, or like Avatar. Sam Withington or Wilson, or I don't know, the guy, the main guy in Avatar was the main guy in this show. And he was sitting like two benches away from me. Not that I'm not starstruck at all. I didn't even know who he was half the day. I was like, that guy looks really familiar. And then someone told me after, I was like, I think I know that guy. And I really like the movie Avatar. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. And I was like, I know that. And then we had this like one of the girls with us. She was like super starstruck, and she was like all dreamy eyed. And then she told me, I was like, that's where I knew the guy from. But I was just thinking of the cost alone. Like, I could not imagine. And then like how much you're paying. That's why they say like one scene could cost $10,000, and it easily, because you're paying all these people, and you're probably renting a bunch of this equipment, and you're renting the facility. So obviously one 5-minute scene is going to cost a ton of money. But I thought, if you're filming something like Avatar, could you imagine how much that would cost if this was a pilot? So I don't know exactly how it works. They would probably go to investors, and they'd get people to invest in this film, and they'd pitch the idea and say, these are the actors that we have, and we think it could be projected to make this much amount of money. So then you have to budget, and you have to work your way down and figure out how much everything's going to cost. And then I think you've got to cross your fingers and hope that people are going to watch it, or networks are going to pick it up like Netflix. I actually think this one was Hulu. I think this was filmed on Hulu. So they actually had, it was that Sam guy, I forget his last name. I think he might be Australian. And then they had another guy who was quite famous, another guy that's in Yellowstone. And then they had Macaulay Culkin's brother. He was there, and he looks just like his brother. And I know that'd be difficult to always like, I don't even know his name, but that's Macaulay Culkin's brother. He's probably not so happy about being in that. And okay, so then from there, we were in the back scene, or sorry, okay, so we're sitting in the seats, and then the scene was, and the guy messed up a couple times. Of course, they're human. He messed up a couple times. But the thing, you know what was interesting is that they ran that same scene, and it was probably less than a minute. It was probably a 30-second scene. They did that same scene. They must have done it a dozen times. And then after they did it a dozen times, they flipped it over. Like, they moved a bunch of people to the other side, moved the filming crew to this side. We stayed in our same seats because we were more in the middle. But then they probably ran it another half a dozen times from a different angle. And it was the same words. It was the same everything. Everyone did the exact same thing. And it was just like, it's so crazy to think. That's why a movie, I don't know how long a movie takes. I'm not a movie expert, obviously, by any means, but I think a movie takes 4 to 6 months to film. And if oh my gosh, it's hard to even fathom. If a 30-second scene takes, we must have been there for an hour, at least an hour. Like, a 30-second scene takes an hour with that much time and effort and energy and cost. How much would it take to, and then of course they have to film over. They probably film, I don't know what they film. They film probably 5 to 8 hours of film, and then they chop it down and do all the edits until it's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it was just crazy to think, like, so now when I watched the show last night when we got back, and I was sitting there watching the show, and I was like, I wonder how long that scene took. then I'm like, I wonder how many times it took them to film that one scene. So you know what's interesting to me is the memorization. And they were short, like they're short clips. And of course you can repeat. It's easy to repeat something for 30 seconds, but you see these like really good actors and they recite this. They could talk for 20 minutes or they talk probably not 20 minutes. They talk for 5 minutes, probably straight. And then you're wondering like, I wonder like, oh my gosh, how can you like memorize all of that? And I'm sure some of it they can make up their own words, or I don't know how it works, but just very interesting for me to see the back end of it and to be like, oh, like how can you memorize that much? How can you sit there all day? And you know what I was thinking, like for the actors too, I got to tell you that I'm sure there's different scenes where it was like, where it's fun, like maybe action scenes are fun, or driving scenes, or running, but of course this looked like a drama. It was in a church. It was just dialogues, only talking. There wasn't much moving, and it wasn't fun. Like it wasn't fun. Like it couldn't have been fun for anyone. They literally sat there for probably 5 minutes in between each take. They would just sit there and like kind of talk to their neighbor or talk to the other casting crew or whatever. Like the actors, they just sat there. But it was the behind the scenes, the guys that were doing all the work. They were moving the lights and they were moving the cameras. And they like one guy had this big thing. He was holding a giant camera. It was like this big thing that hung over. It was like a big backpack and had this crane that hung over, and the camera hung down from it. So we didn't have to carry this. It must have been a 50-pound camera. So we didn't have to carry this camera around everywhere. And then, but he had the backpack on, and there's another guy bringing him the camera to hook it up, screw it on, and it was a lot to it, my gosh. But the thing for me is like, I think from the outside, people are like, oh, like I said, it could be different for different scenes, of course. And I think you get into that maybe for the money or for the passion or to show your acting skills, whatever it is. But it was incredibly boring, is what I'm saying. I couldn't imagine doing that all the time. And I'm sure it changes and alters, but I got to tell you, like those actors, they sat there for an hour too, for like a 30-second scene. I don't even think it was 30 seconds. It was like, well, maybe 15 seconds, 30 seconds, but they sat there for hours. And so then they do their scene, and then they go and sit down, and then they're talking to the neighbor. Like, oh, okay. Then they get up and they do their scene. And I was just like, doing that every single day? No thanks. So from that scene, they took us back out to the tents, and then it was lunchtime. They gave us a sandwich. It was actually a really nice sandwich. They asked, it was a salmon sandwich. It was nice. It was actually really good. But then you're sitting in the tent for probably another hour. And I should mention that we were fortunate to get called out. There was one of the casting crew came out and like handpicked people. He's like, you guys. And we got called to go back to the church again, which was nice. And again, I think like you want to think like, oh, maybe they saw something in me. But I think that's mostly an ego. Like, I think it was just convenient, or maybe you fit that scene. I don't want to feel like they're like, oh, you look really good, or you were a good extra. We were just sitting there. Anyways, he comes out and he grabs a handful of people, maybe 30, 40 people. And there's a ton of people sitting in these tents. There's got to be over 100 people. And then so you go back, we go back to the church, and then we sit there, and then he tells you what you're doing. So ours was, of course, we're an extra. We're in the behind the scenes, and you're actually standing. He's like, just pretend to talk. So there's 5 of us standing in a circle, and then they have their different keywords like roll. I think it's rolling, background. I should know because they said it 100 times yesterday, but I think it was rolling, background. So that's when the background, that's when we start moving and talking, and then it's action. So and they had different cameras from different angles. So when the cameras were ready and set, they were like focusing and like making sure. And there's 2 guys on one camera, and so they had to say a word when they were ready. Like maybe it was like ready, like what all the different cameras that were on this one scene. And then from there, it was like, so we were actually, the only thing that we really did, we stood in a circle and we pretended to talk, and it was so difficult because you can't say anything. Like you can't speak words. So you're miming and talking and like hand gestures, and you're moving your head, and then, oh, you're looking at this person over here, and then you're looking at that person. We had a blast. We really did. We were laughing so hard. It was really funny. But that's it. Like that's what we did. We did that for probably an hour. And it was maybe 30 seconds each time. It felt like a really long time just to sit there and pretend to talk. We sat there for a really long time. That was probably an hour. And then we went back to the tent, and then we had lunch. So they walked us down a couple blocks and if there were some older people there, I guess they wanted older people to be in church scenes. But these older people, some of them were quite old. They had canes, and some of them walking was a bit difficult. And we walked probably 2 blocks to they had to have a big enough area. There wasn't enough area in the park, but they had a big enough area to have these food trucks and enough room for a lineup to get there. So there was a lot to it. So, but anyways, I felt bad for the people that had to walk that far to get their food. Food was fine. Like it wasn't great. Like it wasn't gourmet or anything. But like I said, I was expecting to be uncomfortable, and I was just happy to be fed. So we ate the food, and then they said, hey, whoever was in the last scene, you got to come back in the church for another scene. And we're like, kind of like, yeah, let's go back, because Otherwise, you're sitting there. And then, but there was people sitting there. So some people got there in, like, we were probably there at, what time did we leave? We must have been there at 8. So some people got to do one scene at about 9:30. Maybe that took an hour. So from 10:30 till 3, they were sitting there. They're doing nothing. They're on their phones. They're reading a book. So they're basically sitting there all day, which would have been very difficult. Anyway, so they called us back and we did we did the miming scene again, but we had to do it from the other side of the church. So it was the exact same scene. All they were doing is doing a different angle, just like the first time. So it was crazy to me to think, like, that's an all day. And that scene, my God, that scene was, like I said, no, sorry. It wasn't the initial scene from the morning. It was a different scene. But I would guess that they did 2 or 3 scenes with us. And that was an all-day thing for us. My gosh, when did we leave? I think we left at 6. It was a 12-hour day. It was just about, I think it was 11.5-hour day. And from what I've seen, they only did 2 or 3 scenes with us. And then while we were sitting there, they probably did 2 or 3 other scenes. So you get 5 minutes out of all day. I don't know if I would go back and do it again, to be honest with you. Like, there was a few people that made it a bit uncomfortable. Like, there were some people there, and I think in any situation you'll have those people, but there was people there that they were overdoing their job. They were a bit like, they had a nice little truck there. You had to go wait in line, but you could go to this truck, and we had a tea in the morning, and we had like a granola bar, or I actually had a nice chia. I think it was coconut cream and chia seeds and raspberries. I had that as a little snack with tea. But then there was some lady there that she was some lady there that was she was overdoing her job. I don't know a better way to put it, but she was like, so we walked to there was a truck that opened up. I don't know, it was like a trailer that opened up. Big door came down, and then there's a screen, and you ordered. And she's like, you guys can't come in line. There's too many people in line. And we're like, okay. So we're like really offended. Like, okay, we'll just come back. But we leave, and we come back, and the lineup's even longer, and there's other people standing in line, and she's still standing there. So, like, it just seemed a bit odd. And then she was doing some other things, but, like like I said, like, you're crammed in the church, you're crammed in line. But then we were sitting next to each other eating lunch. We're sitting next to eating lunch, and they're like, are you guys a cohort? Are you guys allowed to sit next to each other? Are you guys supposed to? And we're like, what are you talking about? You're crammed in line when you're going to the church. You're crammed in the church. But then they don't want you sitting next to each other in the tent. And I know they have their protocol and stuff, but I could count 3 other people that weren't just doing that, but they were doing a bit too much, in my opinion. So it seemed like, so that made the day not as enjoyable. But I mean, you're going to have those type of people everywhere. And that's of course, they're doing their job. Like, whatever they need to do, I'm okay with. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to think of if I would do that again. And obviously I wouldn't do it for the money. I would make more money working on my job and not being away from it. And I really like my work. I really love what I do every day. And I'm very grateful for it. And maybe that showed me that more than anything, is that, and because some people were doing that as a job, like that was their full-time job as an extra. And I talk to everyone, and I ask questions. That's, like I told you when we started the show, like, that's who I am. I like to ask questions. So some of these, like, makeup people, they only have their job while there's filming going on. So that filming could be 2 or 3 months, and then they could be off for 2 or 3 months applying or waiting for another film to come in, or they're doing other odd jobs just trying to be able to pay their rent and put food on their table. And I talked to some extras, and that's what they do. Some of them have an agent, and of course their agent gets, I think they said their agent gets 15 or 20%, and that's what they do. They sit there and wait for an email, they wait for a phone call, and hope that they can get another gig or another job. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great that people are able to do that kind of stuff and are trying to maybe pursue a dream. But it was really hard for me to understand why they were there. And I think the only thing that I could gather or put together is that other jobs could be hard to find right now, and at least they're working. But for someone, like, to do that all the time, I certainly wouldn't do it. I don't even know if I would do it ever again, let alone consistently. But some people don't have a choice. And I suppose all I'm saying here is that I'm very fortunate to be able to wake up and have a job that I really enjoy, and I want to do. Like, I want to do my job every day. I can't wait to wake up and work in most cases. So that's all I'm saying. But now, I mean, I don't want it to ruin because all I was thinking about last night when I was watching that show was the scene behind the scenes and the extras. We were watching the extras, and we're like, oh, I wonder how much they're getting paid, or I wonder how they got to fit in that dress, or I wonder how long they had to wait to, so it kind of takes the Hollywood out of it, being involved in it. But I'm sure that will fade. If you're doing it all the time, I think it would be difficult, but I think that will fade in time. And like I said, it was fun. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Have a great day, everyone.
True Form Life.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Exploring Mind and Body. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. You can always find us on Facebook.com/TrueFormLife. We post up there a couple times a day on our story. We're always trying to bring you more content around living a healthy lifestyle, whether that be nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. We also have free challenges that we do at least once a month. So if you follow us along there, you'll be able to join maybe a plank challenge or a squat challenge, Tabata challenge, challenge, whatever it may be. We'd love to have you join us. We're also on Instagram.com/DrewTadia. Again, we're posting up there a couple times a day along with our story, all dedicated to keeping you fit and healthy and on track. Our main website is trueformlife.com. If you want to check out some of our products, some of our services, or if you just want some great content from videos to blog posts and recipes and more, we got all that at trueformlife.com. Once again, thank you so much for being here. That's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. As always, I'm your host, Drew Tadia, in health and fitness for a better world. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Exploring Mind and Body with Trueform Life's Drew Tadia, fitness expert. To find out more about the show, Drew Tadia, or to listen to past shows, visit exploringmindandbody.com.